Welcome to this presentation on physical sciences. I'm going to try and answer the following questions in this presentation. What is the subject about? What skills are required to complete the subject successfully? And what are some reasons why you should choose science? Physical sciences is divided into two main disciplines, namely physics and chemistry. In physics, we will explore mechanics, wave, sound and light, electricity and magnetism, while in chemistry, we look at matter and materials, chemical change, and chemical systems. Let's have a closer look at what physics topics we're going to be studying. Let's take a closer look at what topics are involved in studying physics. Mechanics is one of the oldest topics in physics. It deals with the world around us and what we observe in motion and tries to explain topics like energy, momentum, and power. It's a lot of fun, and we can learn to explain things that we see in the natural world. Anything from a moving cheetah to a flying aeroplane to a rocket that launches into space. There are always questions that we can ask about what's happening as we look at these interesting ideas that we see almost in our everyday lives. The second area of physics that we will explore is one that is known as wave, sound, and light. And it's obviously something that we experience all the time. The very fact that you're hearing my sound of this presentation and you're seeing the presentation is an indication of the practical application of sound and light. And these can all be described if we understand wave phenomena in a little bit more detail. This is really interesting stuff because it was really exploded in the 20th century with people like Einstein and others like him who make sense of the world around us by looking at wave phenomena. One of the most practical aspects of physics is found in electricity and magnetism, and it's all around us. It perforates our whole being. We recognize uses of machines and electronics, and it certainly is something that has a lot of curiosity, that we can ask a lot of questions about. We can see it in natural phenomena, things like the aurora and things like lightning, the magnetic field around the Earth, protecting us from the solar wind. All of these things are really important for us to understand why life on Earth exists and how we've harnessed the power of electricity to make so many different inventions. Maybe you'll be an inventor too and help us to solve some of our energy problems going forward. The second part of physical sciences is chemistry. This discipline is not entirely different to physics, but it asks things in a different way. So the basic skills of questioning, observation, those are all common factors. Interpretation of graphs and data all happens in both physics and chemistry, but chemistry is a lot of fun. In chemistry, we look at the world around us and we notice that matter and materials, we interact with them all the time. To try and explain some of the properties of things we see around us, we have to build models. The model of the atom, models of bonding, and begin to understand why these things exist as they do. And that's a really important aspect of chemistry, being able to link what we can see as in life, what we can see and touch and feel, and the theories and the models that we build around us to try and explain some of these properties. One of the fundamental features of chemistry is, of course, what happens when different materials combine together to form new substances in a chemical reaction, what we call and note as chemical change. And so there are various types of chemical reactions that are a lot of fun to observe, but even more interesting to try and explain what's happening and try and predict what's going to happen when we put different things together. Of course, one of the most important things that we do in chemistry is to represent the chemical change in a language all of its own. We call those balanced chemical equations, and they are very, very important. We also will explore something called organic chemistry, and we'll be able to see organic chemical reactions, which are obviously part of what we see in the world around us, what's happening in our motor cars, what's happening in our bodies. And so these are all very important, and we will explore the different types of chemical reactions under chemical change. Of course, chemical systems are what we see around us, the world around us, the bigger picture. It's not just what happens in the laboratory in little test tubes, but we explore environmental issues related to chemistry, the water cycle, global warming, mining, the energy crisis that we have. And so this puts a human touch and a really urgent area of exploration and research that we will engage with, understanding the fundamental principles of chemistry and applying them to much bigger systems. Now that you have a bit of a better idea of what physical science is about, we have to ask the question, what skills are required to be successful in this subject? Let's have a look at these. We develop scientific knowledge by observation, and we are required in physical sciences to make sure that we can recall and make sense of the information that we've learnt. We're also asked to explain relationships. This is a very important part of analysis of data in front of us. And then finally, we may be asked to apply our knowledge of various laws and relationships to unusual situations and see how these actually work. So as we've seen in the different topics in both physics and chemistry, application is a very important part of the understanding of science. Now, how do we do this? Well, we don't just do it by reading in a book. The most important thing about science is that we do practical investigations. Practical investigations involve almost every topic of the science curriculum. And so you can look forward to doing things, to getting your hands dirty in a sense, of putting things together, asking questions, making observations, recording data, processing that data mathematically as well as in words, to describe things that you see and observe and smell and hear, and coming to some conclusions of your own. The most important thing, though, is that you are curious. Physical science is all about asking questions about the world that we live in. And so curiosity is a major reason for taking this subject. And it's something that we want to develop in women who aspire to become scientists of the future. Now it's time to look at our third question. What are some reasons to choose science? I want you to think about this very carefully, because science is all about making decisions. But you need to look at the evidence, you need to look at the data and make the correct decision. Evaluate carefully your decisions. So let's have a look at some reasons that we might look at. Firstly, let's look at some bad reasons for choosing science. These usually end up with, if you use these reasons to take science, you might be quite unhappy, and as a result you might lose interest and then not perform very well. So the first reason that I've put down is that your friends might be taking science. You might not be so interested in science, but you decide to choose the subject because your friends or family members have taken the subject. That's not a very good reason. You need to think about what you enjoy, what makes you curious. And if you're not curious about the world around you, then your friends aren't going to really help you get through the subject. Maybe you've heard the teachers are very nice, and yes, they might be, but teachers change. You might end up finding that you have a different teacher than the one you expected, and that might then influence the way that you are motivated to perform. So don't make your choice based on a teacher. On the other hand, you might say, well, I've got to do science because of my career. It's not a very good reason to choose the subject. You actually need to enjoy it. You need to have some passion about it. And so I'd really encourage you not to look too far ahead, but to think carefully about what you enjoy and what you'd like to do, and not be so focused on your career ahead of time. There's lots of ways to achieve your career goals. doesn't only have to be by choosing science. So what are some good reasons for choosing science? Well, firstly, I would suggest that if you like solving problems and you're very good at maths, at least getting above 50% at grade 9 for mathematics, then you're an ideal candidate to do physical science and you'd be able to do well at it. Of course, to do really well, that means to achieve a distinction, you have to make sure that your maths marks are above 80%. Because there's a lot of maths in science. If you're a little bit concerned about the maths, please speak to your teacher about it. Both your science and maths teacher will be able to give you some advice. The most important thing, I believe, is that if you ask a lot of questions about the world around you, if you're curious to see why is a raindrop circular, or why does water stick to a window when it's raining, you might ask other questions in terms of why does my pool turn green after lightning has struck? All of these things. Why is the sky blue? Everyday questions as we see the world around us. If you're interested in asking questions about it, then I would suggest it's a subject that you need to take. On the other hand, you might say that you really do have a sense of that you'd like to study science after school. And if that's your motivation, that you'd like a career in engineering or in medicine or in veterinary or in science itself, in physics or chemistry, geology, or many of the other biochemistry, these are all fields available to you. Don't be put off by the fact that there is so much choice, but rather understand that you need to be motivated and curious to do this. And one of the things that motivates us as we look forward ahead of time, recognize that careers are changing, but you might be inspired by other women that have been successful in science. Read their stories and see how they've worked hard to succeed. And so I hope that you will take consideration of not only what we're going to be studying in science in the next 3 years, the different aspects of physics and chemistry, but you take a careful look and choose wisely. Make sure that your reasons for choosing the subject are good. I wish you success in the future.